Hi, I'm Pat Walsh with Spencer Stewart. I'm here with my good friend Sergio Rial. Sergio has had a career over the last 30 years that's encompassed investment banking, global agribusiness, and most recently joining the board of Delta Airlines. We're here to talk today about a range of leadership experiences he's had on his journey to become a CEO and ultimately a board member of one of the great companies in the world. Sergio, as a global CEO running a company, what are the three most important priorities you're facing?
There are many, but I would start saying pressure. There is a lot of pressure on the CEO today for change. And I think it's figuring out what's the right level of change you really want to see implemented in the company you're leading. So managing the polarity of constancy and change is a big one. You have your board probably pushing for good change, you have your stakeholders generally, and you also have a culture you want to preserve, and certain things you really want to make sure that doesn't get changed. So finding that balance in a world that is going so fast, it's pretty important. The second one is understanding, or at least recognizing, the challenge around this new digital era. I think it's really reshaping. It doesn't matter which industry and sector you are in. I mean, it is for real, and most companies are certainly led by people who have not necessarily been brought up, including myself, in what I would call in a generation that understands and feels extraordinarily comfortable in figuring out the insights of this new era. So it feels sometimes that you're leading in the intersection of internal and external. So what is to be an internal culture or things that would be very proprietary to a company, it's no longer that anymore. I mean, everything is interchangeable. So transparency has taken a whole different level of importance. I always say that in a world like the one we're living today, the voice of the employee sometimes is even more important than any press statement a big company can actually put forward. So understanding those intersections are pretty important.
A recent CEO study suggested that creativity is an increasingly important trait of a CEO. Could you talk about that and how creativity plays a role as a leader?
It's a very difficult question because creativity can be interpreted in many different ways depending which industry you are in. But creativity comes on the back of collaboration, and because nobody can in an individual basis be able to create. No one creates anything today by themselves. You absolutely need groups, you need networks, you need teams. So I think the real challenge is not so much hiring really bright, creative individuals in isolation, unless you have really fostered a culture that it's highly collaborative. And the difference between collaboration and connectivity is pretty significant. Collaboration means you do care. It's personal. You're doing something that intent touches you, both mentally and emotionally, which is different than connect. So I think it's easier said than really ensuring that you have teams that are truly collaborative. And then, of course, it's a function of alignment. So alignment towards where you're going to be leading the company towards, and also fostering a culture where freedom of thought and being challenged all the time it's nurtured. And big companies need, in a way, it's another paradox, processes, and some of them are pretty industrialized, but at the same time you need to instill some level of chaos, constructive chaos.
How do you think about, or are there particular examples of great collaboration versus mere connectivity that you've seen professionally in your investment banking or general management or finance career? How has it worked when it really works well?
I think when the strategy and the intent is very clear. So I think it has to start about what you're trying to accomplish as a team, as a group, as a company. So the intent has to be absolutely clear. Once the intent is absolutely clear, you've got to ensure that there is totally alignment how people are also being compensated beyond financial. So that people really truly believe that is the motto of how the company is operating. And the third is instilling a sort of a culture where challenge and constructive discomfort is part of the game. And human beings are looking and seeking comfort. I mean, creating discomfort in a company provided that it remains constructive, is a pretty big challenge.
When you think about sort of, you get the corner office, you're a CEO, what are the character traits that really come out in a CEO that are imperative for a CEO to bring?
I'm not going to mention the classic ones because I think I will be redundant. But there are a couple of things that I personally feel it's very important. One is humility. I think you got to remain humble, and you got to be careful that for whatever reason, I mean, you're not being carried away. Second, make sure with the same sort of notion around humility, you're not the smartest in the room. So you're a great facilitator to get the absolutely best ideas. I think it's a question of being, at the same time, someone facilitating collaboration, but with a very decisive mindset. So there is a point where you need to understand where it stops and when you need to start moving into execution. But humility for me is something that I don't see that often. The second one is authenticity, being authentic, being yourself, but you can only be there when you've gone through a number of things and experiences yourself. So you've got to be, normally you're a good CEO when you no longer have to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. So you're there to serve.
Let's talk about finding the right people. Jim Collins wrote the book about, get the right people on the bus. How have you in your career thought about building great teams and finding great talent?
Hard. Talent is certainly a CEO prerogative. It is not an HR prerogative. It really starts with the CEO. And I think people really follow people. So at the end, I always say a good advice for people in their early years is don't look for jobs, look for great leaders. So instead of looking for a job, make sure you really get yourself led by somebody who's going to really be teaching you a lot, which is going to be serving you a lot more than just a job. I think it's about recognizing where your gaps are, not only as an individual, but also as a company. Being very relentless around talent and quality, and also managing appropriately the need to develop your own people, but at the same time continuously infuse talent that can create disruption. And sometimes that is really, when it's well managed and when it's with the right intent, it's really productive. But also people who can actually test your own rituals and beliefs around your business model. So it's but how you do it, I mean, you expose yourself, you invest time, you plan, you talk, you challenge, you remain uncomfortable. And you make sure that everyone, particularly your direct reports, are being constantly evaluated against your key competitors. I think you need to continuously look at your own management team and your competitors and have a very open dialogue. I mean, do we deserve to have the position we have? How do we ensure we maintain our position, our profitability, our market share, however you define your key financial metrics? I think the risk most companies have is the search for sameness. Where you need to be careful is not necessarily to create and to find your own clone. You will be better served long term ensuring that there is a level of diversity and diverse thought process around you that will create the right level of discomfort to yourself. Every time you're leading people who are not even from your own culture, it's harder. I mean, myself being a foreigner and having lived in many different places, it's different leading a Chinese team than it is an European team or an American team or a South American for that matter. So the adaptability, so there isn't one size fits all and there is one model. Great leaders will attract great people, and if they can't attract them, they will develop, which is even better.